The research ship Starbound Explorer moved slowly through space toward a green and blue planet. Dr. Jake Murphy pressed his face against the window and smiled. After 3 months of travel, they had finally reached Kepler 442c. The planet looked like Earth, but the readings showed it was full of strange life forms that no human had ever seen. Jake was excited. As the team's main scientist who studied alien animals, this was his dream job. He had spent years learning about creatures from other worlds, but he had never seen any in person. Today would change that. The ship's captain, a tall alien with crystal-like skin, walked over to Jake. His name was Krex-9, and he belonged to a race called the Zalathi. His body looked like it was made of blue glass, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes. "Dr. Murphy, we will land in 1 hour, Krex-9 said. "Are you ready for surface exploration?" Jake nodded quickly. "I've been ready for months." "What kind of animals do you think we'll find down there?" Krex-9 looked worried. "The planet scans show many dangerous creatures. You must stay close to the team and follow all safety rules." Jake laughed. "Don't worry so much. I've worked with dangerous animals on Earth. How different can they be?" The other team members gathered in the ship's main room. Dr. Yeathvel was from the Neptari race. She looked like a person, but her skin was blue-green and she had gills on her neck. She could breathe both air and water. Zak Thol was a Vorthak, and he looked like a giant insect that walked on 2 legs. His big eyes could see things humans couldn't see. "The landing zone is clear," Yeathvel said, checking her computer. "No large predators in the immediate area." Zak Thul clicked his mandibles, which was how his people showed they were nervous. "The readings show many unknown life signs deeper in the forest. We should be very careful." Jake picked up his equipment bag. Inside were cameras, sample containers, and tools for studying animals. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child reading books about space exploration. The ship landed in a clearing surrounded by tall trees with purple leaves. The air outside was warm and humid, like a summer day in Florida. Strange sounds came from the forest. Clicks, whistles, and calls that Jake had never heard before. "Remember, we stay together," Krex-9 said as they walked down the ship's ramp. "This planet has been scanned, but we know very little about the creatures that live here." Jake was already taking pictures of everything. The plants were amazing colors: bright orange, deep purple, and glowing green. Some of the trees seemed to move on their own, and he could see small creatures flying between the branches. They walked into the forest, following a path that the ship's sensors had found. Jake was so busy looking at everything that he didn't notice his teammates getting more and more nervous. "Dr. Murphy," Yeathvel said quietly, "perhaps we should return to the ship. The animal sounds are getting closer." Jake stopped and listened. She was right. The forest around them was full of noise, rustling leaves, breaking branches, and strange calls. But to Jake, it sounded wonderful. It meant the forest was alive and full of creatures to study. "This is perfect," he said. "We're hearing a whole ecosystem at work. I can't wait to see what's making all these sounds." That's when they saw it. The creature stepped out from behind a large tree about 50 feet away. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like a big cat, but its skin was covered in scales that changed color as it moved. The scales went from deep blue to bright silver to purple. Its eyes were large and yellow, and when it opened its mouth, Jake could see long, curved fangs that dripped with clear liquid. All 3 of Jake's teammates froze completely. Krex-9's crystal skin turned dark blue, which meant he was very afraid. Ythvel stopped breathing, and Zak Thul made a high-pitched sound that hurt everyone's ears. "Death Whisper," Zak Thul whispered. "We are all dead." "What's a death whisper?" Jake asked, but he was already walking toward the creature. He had his camera out and was taking pictures. "Stop," Crex9 said, but his voice was so quiet that Jake barely heard him. "That creature's bite kills any living thing in the galaxy. Its venom destroys cells and causes immediate death." Jake looked back at his friends. They were all shaking with fear, but he didn't understand why. The creature was clearly a predator, but it was also one of the most beautiful animals he had ever seen. Its scales moved in patterns like waves on the ocean. "It's just a big kitty," Jake said, moving closer. "Look how pretty its scales are. I bet it's just curious about us." The Death Whisper tilted its head and watched Jake approach. It didn't seem aggressive, just interested. Jake had always been good with animals, and he could usually tell when they were dangerous. This creature seemed more curious than hostile. "Dr. Murphy, please step away from that animal," Ythvel said. Her voice was shaking. "That species has killed members of 17 different races. No one has ever survived its bite." Jake was now only 20 feet from the Death Whisper. He could see that its scales had tiny patterns on them, like fingerprints. Its eyes followed his movements, and he thought he saw intelligence there. "Maybe no one ever tried being friendly with it," Jake said. He sat down on the ground and held out his hand, like he would with a scared dog. The Death Whisper moved closer. Its steps were silent, and its body moved like water. Jake could smell something sweet in the air, like flowers mixed with medicine. "This is fascinating," Jake said, still taking pictures. "Look at how it moves. It's clearly built for hunting, but it's being so careful around us." The creature came within 10 feet of Jake and stopped. It sat down just like a house cat would. For a moment, human and alien animal just looked at each other. Then the Death Whisper moved faster than anyone could see. It lunged forward and buried its fangs deep in Jake's left arm. Jake looked down at the bite marks and the clear liquid running down his arm. His teammates were already saying prayers for the dead in their own languages. But Jake just smiled. "Wow," he said, watching the purple swelling spread up his arm. "That's really interesting. It's only a little tingly." The medical bay of the starbound explorer was full of panic. Dr. Ythvel worked frantically at the medical computers while Zak Thul prepared emergency medicines. Crex9 stood in the corner, his crystal body flashing different colors as he tried to contact every medical expert in the galaxy. Jake sat calmly on the examination table, looking at his arm with scientific interest. The bite marks were clearly visible, 2 deep puncture wounds that had already stopped bleeding. The skin around the bites had turned a beautiful shade of purple, and he could feel a warm, tingling sensation moving slowly up his arm. "How do you feel, Dr. Murphy?" Ythvel asked, while scanning his arm with her medical tools. Her voice was shaky, and her blue-green skin had turned pale. "Pretty good, actually," Jake said, flexing his fingers. "The tingling is kind of pleasant. It reminds me of when your foot falls asleep, but in a good way. And there's this interesting taste in my mouth. Sort of metallic, with hints of something sweet." Zak Thul stopped what he was doing and stared at Jake. "You should be dead by now. The Death Whisper venom works in 3 stages. First, complete paralysis, then cellular breakdown, finally death. This process takes no more than 5 minutes for any known species." Jake looked at the clock on the wall. It had been 15 minutes since the bite. "Well, I'm definitely not paralyzed. Watch this." He stood up and did a little dance, moving his arms and legs freely. Yithvel's medical scanner started beeping wildly. She looked at the readings and made a sound of confusion. "This is impossible. The scanner shows massive amounts of death whisper venom in your bloodstream. You should be dead 10 times over." "But I'm not," Jake said cheerfully. "In fact, I feel better than I have in months. My vision seems sharper, and I swear I can hear conversations happening 3 rooms away." Crex 9 finished his communication with the medical experts on his home world. "Dr. Murphy, the best toxin specialists in Zalathi space want to speak with you. They say what you describe is scientifically impossible." Jake sat back down and rolled up his sleeve so Yithvel could take blood samples. "Maybe impossible for other species, but apparently not for humans. This is really exciting from a research perspective." Zach Thule mixed several different antidotes and approached Jake with a large syringe. "We will try the standard treatments. Perhaps we can still save your life." "Go ahead," Jake said, "but I really don't think I need saving." The insect-like doctor injected the antidote into Jake's arm. They all waited for something to happen. The antidote was supposed to neutralize the venom and stop the cellular damage. Instead, Jake's arm tingled more pleasantly, and he said he felt even better. "Try the Andromedan neutralizer," Yithvel suggested. "It works on toxins that the standard treatment cannot handle." Zach Thule prepared another injection. This antidote was bright green and was known to be so powerful that it could bring back people who were already clinically dead from most venoms. He injected it into Jake's other arm. Jake waited a moment, then started laughing. "That one tickles. And now I can definitely hear the conversation in the engine room. The engineers are worried about the fuel consumption." The 3 alien doctors looked at each other in amazement. Their best medical treatments were having no effect at all. Jake's body was not only surviving the most deadly venom in the galaxy, but it seemed to be enjoying it. "We need to run more tests," Yithvel said. She began taking samples of Jake's blood, saliva, and even hair. "I want to understand how your body is processing this venom." While she worked, Jake described his symptoms in detail. The tingling had spread to his entire body, but it felt good, like a gentle massage from the inside. His senses were definitely enhanced. He could see details across the room that he couldn't see before, and he could hear sounds from all over the ship. "Oh, this is interesting," Jake said, looking at his hands. In the dim light of the medical bay, he could see his veins glowing faintly purple. "I think the venom is moving through my circulatory system, but instead of causing damage, it's improving things?" Zizak Thule's compound eyes widened. "Improving things? What do you mean?" Jake stood up and walked to the other side of the room. His movements were smoother and more coordinated than usual. "My reflexes feel faster. My balance is better. And I have this weird sense that I can tell what you're all feeling." He was right. Jake could somehow sense that Crex 9 was fascinated but scared. Yithvel was confused but excited about the scientific possibilities. And Zach Thule was worried that Jake might die at any moment. "This is unprecedented," Yithvel said, looking at her test results. "Your cellular structure is completely normal. The venom is present throughout your system, but it's not causing any damage. If anything, it seems to be enhancing your biological functions." Crex 9 had been quiet for a while, but now he spoke up. "Dr. Murphy, I have sent a full report to Alliance Command. They are very interested in your survival. Ships from 12 different worlds are being sent to our location." "Ships?" Jake asked. "Why?" "Because," Zach Thule said slowly, "if humans can survive Death Whisper venom, The entire galaxy needs to know about it. This changes everything we understand about toxin resistance and biological compatibility. Jake nodded, understanding the implications. Death Whisper Venom was considered the ultimate test of biological durability. Many scientists used it as a benchmark. If something could survive that venom, it could survive almost anything. The fact that a human not only survived it but seemed to benefit from it would shock the scientific community. "I should probably contact Earth," Jake said. "They're going to want to know about this too." Yithvel finished her analysis and showed the results to the others. The venom is being broken down by his immune system, but very slowly. It's as if his body is studying it and learning from it rather than trying to eliminate it quickly. "How long before it's completely out of my system?" Jake asked. "At this rate," she calculated, "approximately 72 hours. But Dr. Murphy, I don't think it will ever be completely gone. Some of the molecular changes appear to be permanent." Jake looked at his still glowing arm and smiled. "Permanent changes? Like what?" "Enhanced reflexes, improved sensory processing, increased resistance to other toxins," Zach Thule listed. "You may have become the first human to be permanently improved by an alien venom." Jake laughed again. "Well, that's not something you read about in the job description. I wonder what other surprises this planet has in store for us." Outside the ship, the death whisper that had bitten Jake was lying near the landing site. For some reason, it had not returned to the forest. Instead, it seemed to be waiting for something, occasionally looking toward the ship with its intelligent yellow eyes. Jake could feel it out there, though he didn't understand how or why. Dr. Lisa Park was having the worst day of her career. As the cultural liaison for the human exploration team, she was supposed to handle communications between different species. Usually, this meant translating jokes or explaining human customs. Today, she was fielding emergency calls from governments across the galaxy. Her communication console had been beeping non-stop for 6 hours. Every major civilization wanted to know the same thing. Was the report about Jake Murphy true? Had a human really survived Death Whisper venom? "Dr. Park, this is Admiral Vex Prime of the Andromedan Fleet," came the latest call. "We need immediate confirmation of the Murphy incident. Our biological warfare department is very interested." Lisa looked across the ship's communication room at Jake, who was calmly eating lunch while reading a book about local plant life. His arm still glowed faintly purple, and he seemed completely unaware that he had become the most famous human in the galaxy. "Admiral, I can confirm that Dr. Murphy was bitten by a death whisper and survived," Lisa said carefully. "He is currently in good health and shows no signs of distress." "Impossible," the Admiral replied. "Death Whisper venom has killed Andromedian soldiers in full protective suits. How can a human survive with no protection at all?" Lisa had been asking herself the same question all day. "We're still investigating the details, Admiral. I'll send you the medical reports as soon as they're complete." She ended the call and immediately received another one. This time it was from the Rigelian Science Council, then the Centauri Medical Alliance, then the Vega Colonial Authority. Everyone wanted the same information, and Lisa was running out of ways to say, "We don't know how he survived either." Jake finished his lunch and walked over to the communication station. "Busy day?" he asked, noticing the flashing lights on all the communication channels. "Jake, every government in the galaxy is calling about you," Lisa said. "They want to know if all humans are like you, or if you're special somehow." Jake thought about this. "I don't think I'm special. I mean, I've always been pretty healthy, but so are most humans. We don't usually get sick from things that bother other species." This was true. During the first years of human contact with alien civilizations, doctors had noticed that humans seemed unusually resistant to diseases and toxins that affected other species. But everyone had assumed this was just because humans were new to the galactic community and hadn't been exposed to alien germs yet. Maybe we should test other humans, Jake suggested. See if they react the same way. I did. Lisa's communication console beeped again. This time it was Captain Rodriguez from the human ship New Horizon, which was 3 days away from their position. "Lisa, we just received orders from Earth Command," Captain Rodriguez said. "We're bringing a full medical team and 20 volunteers for testing. Dr. Amanda Cole is leading the mission." Jake perked up. "Dr. Cole? She's the best toxicologist on Earth. I read all her papers in graduate school. She specifically requested to work with you, Dr. Murphy," the captain continued. "Apparently, your survival has caused quite a stir in the Earth scientific community as well." After the call ended, Lisa looked at the list of incoming ships on her screen. 12 different species had sent research vessels to their location. The small exploration mission had suddenly become the most important scientific gathering in recent galactic history. "Jake, do you realize what this means?" Lisa asked. "If other humans react like you did, it could change everything. The balance of power in the galaxy is based partly on biological warfare capabilities. If humans are immune to toxins..." Jake nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand the bigger picture. It would mean that the main weapons some species use against each other wouldn't work on humans at all. That evening, Jake decided to go outside the ship again. He felt drawn to the forest, though he couldn't explain why. The Death Whisper was still near the landing site, and when Jake appeared, the creature approached him without any signs of aggression. "Hello there," Jake said softly. "I guess we're connected now, aren't we?" The Death Whisper sat down next to Jake, just like a domestic cat would. Jake reached out carefully and touched its scales. They were warm and seemed to pulse gently under his touch. The creature made a soft purring sound. "I'm going to call you Bitey," Jake said. "I hope you don't mind." Crex 9 watched from the ship's doorway, amazed. "Dr. Murphy, that creature has been waiting for you all day. It refused to leave the area, even when we tried to scare it away." Jake could feel something from Bitey. Not thoughts exactly, but emotions and sensations. The creature was curious about him, and there was something else, recognition. As if Bitey understood that Jake was different now, changed by their encounter. "I think the Venom did more than just enhance my abilities," Jake told Crex 9. "I think it created some kind of connection between us." Over the next 2 days, more ships arrived in orbit around the planet. Scientists, doctors, and government officials from across the galaxy came to study Jake and witness his interaction with Bitey. Jake found himself giving the same demonstrations over and over, showing his enhanced reflexes, his improved senses, and his strange connection with the Death Whisper. Dr. Amanda Cole arrived on the 3rd day with her team of human volunteers. She was a small woman with short gray hair and intense green eyes. She had spent her career studying how different toxins affected human physiology, but she had never seen anything like Jake's case. "Dr. Murphy," she said after reviewing all the medical data, "you've become something unique in the galaxy. Your body has not only survived the most deadly natural toxin known to science, but it has adapted to use that toxin to enhance your capabilities." "Is that good or bad?" Jake asked. Dr. Cole looked out at the ships filling the sky above them. "That depends on what we do with this knowledge. The galaxy has just learned that humans might be biologically superior to every other species in ways that matter for survival. Some civilizations will see this as an opportunity for alliance. Others will see it as a threat. Jake looked down at Bitey, who was resting peacefully beside him. The creature's scales shifted color gently, cycling through blues and purples in a pattern that Jake somehow understood meant contentment. "Well," Jake said, "I guess we're about to find out which is which." In the communication room, Lisa Park was still fielding calls from across the galaxy, but now the tone was changing. Some species wanted to form partnerships with humanity. Others were asking about human expansion plans and military capabilities. A few were discussing the need for preventive measures against this newly discovered human advantage. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more complicated place. The orbital research station looked like a small city floating in space. In just 2 weeks, ships from 12 different species had built the largest scientific facility ever constructed around an unexplored planet. The station had laboratories, living quarters, communication centers, and even a small hospital. All of this was built for one purpose: to study human resistance to alien toxins. Dr. Amanda Cole stood in the main laboratory, looking at rows of containers filled with samples from across the galaxy. Each container held a different toxin, venom, or biological weapon that had been used by various species over thousands of years. Some were natural poisons from dangerous plants and animals. Others were artificial weapons created by military. "Scientists, are you sure about this, Dr. Cole?" asked Sergeant Roy Martinez, one of the 20 human volunteers who had come to be tested. Roy was a former soldier who had volunteered for dangerous missions before. But this was different. They were asking him to be poisoned on purpose. "As sure as we can be," Dr. Cole replied. "Dr. Murphy's case shows that humans can not only survive these toxins, but actually benefit from them. We need to know if this is true for all humans, or if Jake is unique." Jake was working with Dr. Kevin Wright, the team's biochemist, to prepare the testing protocols. Jake's connection with Bitey had grown stronger over the past few weeks. The Death Whisper seemed to understand human emotions now and could somehow sense when the toxins would be harmful or helpful. "Bitey is telling me that this one is safe," Jake said, pointing to a container of bright blue liquid. "It's from the Vega system, right? Some kind of nerve agent?" Dr. Wright checked his notes. "That's correct. Vegan nerve toxin. It causes complete paralysis in most species and death within an hour." "How can you tell it's safe?" Jake wasn't entirely sure himself. "I can feel it somehow. Through my connection with Bitey, the venom changed me in ways we still don't understand." The alien observers watched everything from a separate viewing area. General Clack 9 of the Vorthak military was particularly interested in the tests. His people had been using biological weapons for centuries, and the idea that humans might be immune to them was deeply troubling to him. "If the humans are truly resistant to all biological weapons," he said to his aide, "then our entire military strategy becomes useless. We must report this to the High Command immediately." Dr. Yithvel was more optimistic. "Perhaps this is an opportunity for cooperation," she suggested. "If humans can survive these toxins, they might be able to help us develop better medical treatments for other species." The testing began with the mildest toxins. Roy Martinez was the first volunteer. Dr. Cole injected him with a small amount of Andromedan nerve toxin, something that would cause severe illness in most species, but was not usually fatal. Roy sat quietly for 10 minutes, then looked up with a surprised expression. "I feel relaxed, like I just had a really good drink. Is that normal? Jake grinned. That's exactly how I felt with the first few toxins they tested on me. Your body is processing it like alcohol. They continued the tests throughout the day. Each human volunteer reacted differently to the various toxins, but none of them showed signs of serious harm. The Centauri acid compounds made Dr. Sarah Williams feel like she had eaten very spicy food. The Rigel spider venom gave technician Mike Chen pleasant hallucinations and made him laugh for an hour. "This is incredible," Dr. Cole said, reviewing the results. "Every human we've tested shows the same pattern. Your bodies are not just surviving these toxins, you're metabolizing them into harmless or even beneficial compounds." Jake worked with each volunteer using his connection with Bitey to predict how different toxins would affect them. The Death Whisper had become an unofficial member of the research team, often curling up near the test subjects as if providing comfort and support. "I think Bitey understands what we're doing," Jake told Dr. Cole. "And I think the venom is still changing me. My ability to sense the effects of toxins is getting stronger." By the end of the first week, they had tested 50 different toxins on 20 human volunteers. The results were consistent and amazing. Humans could survive biological weapons that had devastated entire civilizations. More importantly, they could help other species develop resistance to these same toxins. Dr. Cole made a breakthrough when she analyzed Jake's blood after several weeks of testing. "Jake, your DNA has changed," she said, showing him the genetic analysis. "The Death Whisper venom activated dormant sequences in your genetic code, sequences that seem designed to handle exactly these kinds of biological threats." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means humans evolved on a world much more dangerous than we thought," Dr. Cole explained. "These genetic sequences exist for a reason. At some point in human history, our ancestors faced biological threats so severe that they developed immunity to virtually every type of toxin and disease." Jake thought about this while he watched Bitey play with some of the other volunteers. The Death Whisper had become very friendly with humans, but it still avoided the alien researchers. It was as if the creature could sense which species were biologically compatible with its venom. "Dr. Cole," Jake said, "what if Earth's history isn't what we think it is? What if the dangerous animals and plants on our planet aren't natural evolution? What if they're the result of some ancient biological war?" Dr. Cole stopped her work and looked at him. "That's a terrifying thought, Jake, but it would explain a lot about human biology." The alien observers had been listening to these conversations, and General Clack 9 was becoming more worried by the day. He sent urgent messages to his government, warning them that humans might be more dangerous than anyone had realized. "They survived weapons that destroyed our enemies," he reported. "If they decide to become aggressive, we have no biological defenses against them." But not all the aliens were afraid. Crex 9 and his Zalathi colleagues saw opportunity in the human discoveries. "If humans can neutralize biological weapons," he said, "they could help us reclaim worlds that were lost to toxic contamination. We should be building alliances with them, not preparing for war." By the end of the second week, Jake had become something more than human, though he still looked and acted the same. His connection with Bitey had evolved into a true partnership. The Death Whisper could now communicate complex ideas to him through biochemical signals, and Jake could understand the creature's thoughts and emotions. "I think Bitey species are more than just animals," Jake told Dr. Cole. "They might be natural biological sensors, evolved to detect and analyze toxins in their environment. When Bitey bit me, it wasn't an attack. It was making contact. This Revelation opened up entirely new possibilities for research. If the Death Whispers were intelligent and could form partnerships with humans, they might hold the key to understanding biological warfare and defense throughout the galaxy. Jake looked out at the ships surrounding the research station. Some carried scientists and doctors who wanted to learn from human discoveries. Others carried military officers who saw humans as a potential threat. The balance between cooperation and conflict was delicate, and Jake knew that what they discovered in the coming weeks would determine the future of human relationships with the rest of the galaxy. We need to be very careful about how we use this knowledge, he told Dr. Cole. The galaxy is watching us, and some of them are getting scared. Dr. Nathan Bell was the kind of scientist who asked uncomfortable questions. As Earth's leading expert on human evolution, he had always wondered why humans seemed so different from other intelligent species in the galaxy, while other civilizations evolved on peaceful worlds with manageable threats. Humans came from a planet that seemed designed to kill everything that lived on it. Dr. Cole, I need to show you something, Nathan said, connecting his computer to the main display in the research station's conference room. Jake, Bitten, and several alien scientists gathered to watch as Nathan presented his findings. I've been analyzing the genetic changes in Jake and the other test subjects, Nathan began. The dormant DNA sequences that activate in response to toxins, they're not random. They're organized like a defense system, almost like someone designed them. On the screen appeared a complex genetic map showing human DNA structure. Certain sections were highlighted in bright colors, indicating the sequences that had been activated by alien toxins. These sequences contain instructions for producing enzymes and proteins that can neutralize thousands of different biological threats, Nathan continued. But here's the strange part. Many of these threats don't exist on Earth anymore, Jake leaned forward, interested. What do you mean, they don't exist anymore? Nathan switched to a new image showing Earth's geological history. I've been working with the xenogeologists to compare Earth's development with other habitable worlds. Most planets go through gradual changes over millions of years. Earth shows signs of sudden, catastrophic biological changes that happened all at once. Dr. Yithvel, who had become fascinated by human biology, asked, "What kind of catastrophic changes?" "The kind you see when someone deliberately tries to sterilize a planet," Nathan replied grimly. "Look at this data from the Cretaceous period, about 65 million years ago. We always thought the dinosaurs died from an asteroid impact, but the biological evidence suggests something else entirely." The display showed chemical analysis from rock layers dating to that time period. Instead of the expected asteroid debris, the rocks contained traces of artificial biological compounds, toxins, and diseases that could only have been created by an advanced civilization. "Someone tried to kill everything on Earth," Nathan said simply. "They deployed biological weapons designed to eliminate all life. The asteroid impact we've always talked about wasn't from space. It was the result of massive biological warfare." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. And humans survived this? Not humans as we know them now, Nathan explained, but our ancestors did. The genetic defense systems in your DNA are the result of that survival. Over millions of years, the species that would eventually become human developed immunity to virtually every biological weapon ever created. General Clack 9, who had been listening from the alien observation area, spoke up. "Dr. Bell, are you suggesting that humans are the survivors of an ancient genocide attempt?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Nathan replied. "And it gets worse. I've been analyzing the biological threats that still exist on Earth. The venomous snakes, poisonous plants, deadly diseases, they're not natural evolution. They're the descendants of weapons that were deployed against Earth millions of years ago. Dr. Cole looked at the data with growing amazement. This explains why human biology is so different from other species. We didn't evolve in a normal environment. We evolved in a biological weapons testing ground. Crex 9's crystal body flashed with different colors as he processed this information. If this is true, then humans are not just resistant to biological warfare. You are the ultimate product of biological warfare. Your species was forged by surviving the worst biological attacks imaginable. Jake looked down at Bitten, who was resting beside his chair. The Death Whisper's scales were shifting through patterns that Jake now recognized as thoughtfulness. Through their connection, he could sense that Bitten understood the conversation and was remembering something ancient. Bitten knows about this, Jake said suddenly. Not directly, but there's something in their genetic memory. The Death Whispers weren't always predators. They were created to be biological sensors, to detect and analyze the weapons that were used against Earth. Nathan nodded excitedly. That makes sense. If someone was conducting biological warfare on a planetary scale, they would need sensors to monitor the effects of their weapons. The Death Whispers might be living remnants of that monitoring system. This revelation explains so much about Jake's connection with Bitten. The Death Whisper venom wasn't just a random toxin. It was a recognition signal, a way for the ancient monitoring system to identify species that had survived the biological warfare. So when Bitten bit me, Jake said, working through the implications, it was checking to see if I was one of the survivors. And when my body not only survived, but integrated the venom, it confirmed that humans are the descendants of the species that lived through the ancient attack. Dr. Cole was furiously taking notes. This changes everything we know about human biology and Earth's history. We need to contact Earth immediately and have them begin archaeological investigations. But General Clack 9 was thinking about different implications. Dr. Bell, if humans survived biological weapons that were designed to sterilize an entire planet, what does that say about human military potential? Nathan paused his presentation. It says that humans are probably the most biologically resilient species in the galaxy. It also suggests that whoever attacked Earth 65 million years ago failed completely. They threw everything they had at your planet, and not only did life survive, it evolved into something stronger. The conference room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. The humans in the room were learning that their entire species was the product of survival against impossible odds. The aliens were realizing that they had been sharing the galaxy with the ultimate survivors without knowing it. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the planet below. The purple and green forests suddenly looked different to him. Those weren't just alien trees and plants. They were part of an ecosystem that had evolved to coexist with the remnants of ancient biological weapons. There's something else, Jake said, turning back to the group. If the Death Whispers were monitoring systems and they're still active after 65 million years, then they might have records of what happened. Through my connection with Bitten, I might be able to access those records. Dr. Cole's eyes widened. Jake, are you suggesting that you could actually remember the ancient attack through your connection with the Death Whisper? I think it's possible, Jake replied. The connection is getting stronger every day. Sometimes I get flashes of images and sensations that don't make sense. But if Nathan is right about Earth's history, those might be genetic memories from the Death Whisper species. Nathan looked at his data again, focusing on the timeline. If we could access those memories, we might finally understand who attacked Earth and why. we might also learn what happened to them. General Clack 9 shifted nervously. And what if the attackers are still out there? What if they learn that their ancient enemy not only survived, but has now reached the stars? It was a sobering thought. Humanity had just learned that they were the product of an ancient biological war. They had also learned that their survival made them unique in the galaxy. But they still didn't know who had tried to destroy Earth, or whether that enemy might still exist somewhere among the stars. Jake felt Bitey's presence in his mind, offering comfort and reassurance. Whatever had happened in the ancient past, they would face the future together. The partnership between Human and Deathwhisper might be the key to understanding not just their shared history, but their shared destiny as well. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication networks had ever carried any scientific discovery. Within days, every major civilization knew the truth about humanity. They were the survivors of an ancient biological war, immune to virtually every toxin and disease known to science. The reactions were immediate and dramatic. On the crystal world of Zalatha Prime, the High Council called an emergency session. Crex 9 participated via quantum communication, explaining what he had witnessed at the research station. "The humans are not a threat to us," Crex 9 reported. "They seek knowledge and cooperation. Dr. Murphy has shown nothing but kindness to all species he has encountered." High Counselor Zeth 7 glowed with thoughtful blue light. "If the humans can survive biological warfare, they could help us reclaim the toxic zones. 40% of our world has been uninhabitable since the Blight. Wars 3 centuries ago. The Zalathi quickly decided to strengthen their alliance with humanity. They began planning joint expeditions to restore damaged worlds using human biological resistance. But not every species saw opportunity in the human discoveries." Supreme Commander Thexvox of the Xerian hegemony stood before his war council, his reptilian features twisted with concern. The hegemony had built their empire on biological warfare, conquering 17 different civilizations by poisoning their worlds and then colonizing the empty planets. "This changes everything," Thexvox declared. "For 200 years we have been the dominant military force in this sector because no species could resist our biological weapons. Now we learn that humans not only resist these weapons but are improved by them." General Crax Prime, his chief military advisor, brought up tactical displays showing human colony worlds. "Commander, there are already human settlements on 6 worlds in our expansion zone. If they continue to spread, our biological weapons become useless. Then we must act before they become too numerous," Thexvox decided. "Prepare the fleet. We will strike the human colonies before they realize their advantage." Back at the research station, Jake was experiencing the most intense connection with Bitey he had ever felt. The Deathwhisper had been restless for days, pacing around the station and making low sounds that seemed almost like warnings. "Something's wrong," Jake told Dr. Cole. "Bitey is picking up something that's making both of us nervous. There's a sense of danger approaching." Dr. Cole had been studying the biochemical changes in Jake's blood. "Your connection with the Deathwhisper is unlike anything we've seen in interspecies relationships. You're essentially sharing nervous systems now. If Bitey senses danger, you probably do too." Jake nodded. "It's not just danger to us personally. It feels bigger than that. Like something threatening is coming for all humans." His instincts were correct. Even as Jake spoke, Xerion war fleets were moving toward human space. But the hegemony wasn't the only group making plans based on the new information about humanity. Dr. Amanda Cole received an urgent communication from Earth. The message: came from Admiral Sarah Thompson, head of Earth Defense Command. "Dr. Cole, we need you and Dr. Murphy to return to Earth immediately," Admiral Thompson said. "Several alien governments have contacted us with requests for assistance with biological contamination, but our intelligence services have also detected military movements that suggest not everyone sees our immunity as a good thing." Jake listened to the message with growing concern. "Admiral, we can't leave the research station now. We're just beginning to understand the connection between humans and the Death Whispers. This could be vital for our defense." "Dr. Murphy, Earth needs to prepare for the possibility that our biological immunity might make us targets rather than allies," the Admiral replied. "We need you to help us understand our capabilities and limitations." Before Jake could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the research station. Zach Thule's voice came over the communication system. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have detected incoming ships on attack vectors." Jake felt Bitey's fear and anger through their connection. The Death Whisper knew that enemies were approaching, and its predatory instincts were fully activated. Through their bond, Jake could sense other Death Whispers throughout the planet below, all responding to the same threat. "They're not just attacking the station," Jake said, understanding, flooding through him. "They're planning to attack the planet too. They want to eliminate the Death Whispers because they know we're connected to them." General Clack 9, who had remained at the station despite the growing tensions, received his own urgent communications. "Dr. Murphy, my government has decided to offer military protection to human colonies. The Vorthak High Command believes that humanity's survival benefits all species." Similar offers came from the Neptari, the Zalathi, and 6 other civilizations. But Jake knew that good intentions wouldn't be enough against a force that had conquered 17 worlds. "We need to evacuate the research station," Dr. Cole said, but Jake was already shaking his head. "No, we need to understand what we're capable of," Jake replied. "The Xerian hegemony is coming because they're afraid of human biological immunity, but they don't understand what that immunity really means." Jake walked to the station's main laboratory, where samples of every known toxin in the galaxy were stored. Bitey followed him, scales shifting to aggressive patterns of red and gold. "Dr. Cole, remember when you said that my blood could be processed into antidotes for other species?" Jake asked. "Yes, but Jake, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that if humans are immune to biological weapons, maybe we can make other species immune too," Jake said. "The Xerian hegemony's power comes from the fact that their enemies can't resist biological attack. But what if we could change that?" Dr. Cole understood immediately. "You want to create a universal biological defense system using human immunity." "Not just me," Jake said, looking around at the other human volunteers who had gathered in the laboratory. "All of us. We've all been changed by exposure to alien toxins. We might be able to produce treatments that could protect entire worlds." Through his connection with Bitey, Jake could sense the Death Whispers across the planet organizing themselves. They weren't just animals. They were a biological defense network that had been waiting for 65 million years for the right moment to activate. "The Death Whispers aren't just connected to me," Jake realized. "They're connected to each other, and now, through me, they're connected to humanity. We're not just immune to biological weapons. We're part of a planetary defense system." As the Xerian fleet approached, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. Through Bitey and the network of Death Whispers, he could sense the biological signatures of every ship in the attacking fleet. He knew exactly what toxins they carried, how their crews would react to different compounds, and what it would take to neutralize their weapons. "Dr. Cole," Jake said, his voice filled with new understanding, I don't think the Zerion hegemony realizes what they are about to attack. They think they're facing a species that's immune to their weapons. But we're not just immune. We're designed to turn their weapons against them. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the greatest predators are the ones that don't look dangerous at all. The human colony of New Montana had been built in a valley surrounded by purple mountains on a world that reminded the settlers of the American West. Governor Patricia Wells stood on her office balcony, watching the morning sun rise over the simple farms and small towns that made up their peaceful community. She had no idea that 12 Zerion warships were approaching her world, carrying enough biological weapons to kill every living thing on the planet. Captain Steve Johnson was having his morning coffee when the emergency communication came through. As head of the Colonial Guard, he was responsible for the safety of 12,000 human settlers. His small security force was equipped to handle local wildlife and the occasional dispute between neighbors. They were not prepared for military attack. "Governor Wells, we have incoming ships," Captain Johnson reported over his communicator. "They're not responding to our identification requests, and their approach pattern suggests hostile intent." Patricia looked up at the sky, shading, her eyes against the bright sunlight. She could see small dots moving among the clouds, growing larger by the minute. "How many ships, Captain?" 12 large vessels, ma'am. They're bigger than anything in our merchant fleet." Patricia felt a cold fear in her stomach. New Montana was far from Earth and far from any major military bases. If someone wanted to attack them, there would be no help coming in time. High above the planet, Supreme Commander Thex Vox watched the human colony through his ship's viewing screens. The settlement looked peaceful and defenseless, exactly what he expected from a species that had never faced real biological warfare. "Begin the attack sequence," he ordered his weapons officer. "Deploy the atmospheric poisoners first, then the ground contamination bombs, then the neural plague vectors. I want this world completely sterilized within 6 hours." The Zerion hegemony had used this same attack pattern on 17 different worlds. First, they would poison the air so that no living thing could breathe. Then they would contaminate the soil so that nothing could grow. Finally, they would release diseases that would kill any organisms that somehow survived the first 2 stages. "Atmospheric weapons deployed, Commander," reported the weapons officer. "The poison spores are spreading through the upper atmosphere now." Down on the planet, the colonists watched in confusion as strange, glittering clouds began forming in the sky. The clouds had an odd green color and seemed to move against the wind. "Everyone indoors immediately," Captain Johnson ordered over the colony's communication system. "Seal all windows and doors. Something in those clouds might be dangerous." But Patricia Wells was a biologist before she became a governor. She recognized the patterns in the clouds, and her scientific curiosity overcame her caution. She stepped outside and took a deep breath of the changing air. "Governor, get back inside!" Captain Johnson shouted, running toward her building. Patricia held up her hand to stop him. "Wait, Steve. I need to test something." She took another deep breath, then another. The air had a strange taste, like metal mixed with flowers. But she felt fine. "I don't think these weapons work on humans," she said. Within an hour, it became clear that Patricia was right. The Zerion atmospheric poisons had no effect on the human colonists. If anything, the air seemed cleaner and more pleasant to breathe. Several colonists reported feeling more energetic than usual. Commander Thex Vox watched his tactical displays with growing disbelief. "Weapons officer, why are the humans still moving around outside? The atmospheric poisons should have killed them within minutes." I don't understand it, Commander. Our sensors show that the weapons deployed correctly. The poison concentration is at lethal levels for any known species. Deploy the ground contamination bombs, Thex Vox ordered. Perhaps their atmospheric filters are more advanced than we expected. The second wave of weapons fell from the sky, like silver rain. Each bomb contained acids and toxins designed to make the soil so poisonous that nothing could survive touching it. These weapons had turned fertile worlds into dead rocks. But something unexpected happened on New Montana. Instead of dying, the crops began growing faster and larger than they ever had before. Farmer Bill Martinez watched in amazement as his corn stalks grew 3 feet taller in a single day. "Patricia, you need to see this," he called to the governor, over his communicator. "Whatever they're dropping on us, it's like super fertilizer for our plants." Patricia walked through her colony, watching her people tend their gardens in the middle of what was supposed to be a biological warfare attack. Children played in the streets, breathing air that should have been lethal. Farmers worked in soil. That should have been toxic waste. "Captain Johnson, get me a communication line to those ships," she ordered. On the lead Zerion ship, Commander Thex Vox was in full panic. His most powerful biological weapons had not only failed to harm the humans, but seemed to be helping them. This was impossible according to every military manual he had ever studied. "Commander, we're receiving a communication from the human colony," his communications officer reported. "Put it through," Thex Vox ordered, though he dreaded what he might hear. Patricia's voice came through clearly. "This is Governor Patricia Wells of New Montana Colony. I wanted to thank you for the improvements to our atmosphere and soil. Our crops are growing wonderfully. However, I should warn you that if you continue this attack, you're going to hurt your own people." "What do you mean?" Thex Vox demanded. "I'm a biologist, Commander. I can analyze the weapons you're using. Your third-stage attack will be neural. Plague vectors, right? Diseases designed to attack the nervous systems of any survivors?" Thex Vox said nothing, but Patricia continued. "The problem is, those diseases will be based on the same biological principles as your ship's life support systems. When they mutate in our environment, and they will mutate because that's what diseases do, they'll become dangerous to your species too." This was something Thex Vox had never considered. The hegemony's biological weapons were designed to be safe for Zerion physiology, but they had never been deployed against a species that could survive them and allow them to evolve. Dr. Amanda Cole's voice came over the communication channel. She had arrived on New Montana just hours before the attack began. "Commander, this is Dr. Cole, human toxicologist. I've been studying the weapons you've deployed. Governor Wells is correct. If you release the neural plague vectors in an environment where they can't kill their primary targets, they'll adapt to find new targets. Your crew will become the victims of your own weapons." Jake Murphy had also arrived on New Montana, along with Bitten and a team of Death Whispers. Through his connection with the alien creatures, he could sense the fear and confusion aboard the Zerion ships. "Commander," Jake said, joining the communication, "my partners here tell me that your crew is already showing signs of toxin exposure. Your ship's air recycling systems have been contaminated by the atmospheric weapons you deployed. You have maybe an hour before your own people start getting sick." The truth of Jake's words became apparent within minutes. Zerion crew members throughout the fleet began reporting headaches, nausea, and difficulty breathing. The very weapons they had deployed against the humans were now poisoning their own ships. "Medical emergency on all decks," came reports from across the fleet. "The biological weapons have contaminated our life support systems." Commander Thex Vox faced an impossible choice. He could continue the attack and watch his own crew die from their weapons, or he could admit defeat to a species that had turned his ultimate weapons into agricultural improvements. "Dr. Cole," he said finally, "can your people help my crew?" "Of course," Patricia Wells replied immediately. "Send down your sick crew members. We'll treat them and send them back healthy." It was the most unusual ending to a military attack in galactic history. Instead of conquering New Montana, the Xerian hegemony found themselves rescued by the very people they had tried to kill. Human doctors, working with Death Whisper biochemical guidance, quickly developed treatments for the Xerian toxin exposure. Alu. The end of the day, Xerion crew members were walking around New Montana colony, breathing clean air and marveling at the humans who had saved their lives with kindness instead of weapons. Commander Thex Vox stood in Governor Wells' office, his pride completely shattered. "Governor, I came here to destroy your world. Instead, you saved my people. This makes no sense according to any military doctrine I know." Patricia smiled and offered him a cup of coffee made from beans grown in soil enhanced by his own weapons. "Commander, maybe it's time to consider a different kind of doctrine, one based on cooperation instead of conquest. The Xerian hegemony's era of biological warfare ended not with a battle, but with a rescue mission run by the very species they had tried to eliminate. 6 months after the Battle of New Montana, Jake Murphy stood in the observation deck of the space station Harmony, watching the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. Below him, children from 5 different species played together in a garden that would have been deadly to most of them just a year ago. Human children ran alongside young Zalathi, whose crystal bodies sparkled in the artificial sunlight. Neptari youngsters splashed in pools specially designed for their amphibious nature, while Vorthak children clicked and chirped in their complex musical language. Even a few young Xerians were there, their scales shifting colors as they laughed and played. The garden existed in an environment that had once been contaminated by biological weapons. Now it was a paradise where multiple species could live safely together, thanks to the work of the Human Biological Response Corps. "Hard to believe this is the same place where we almost had a war," said Captain Steve Johnson, joining Jake at the observation window. Steve had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Security after his successful handling of the New Montana incident. Jake smiled and reached down to pet Bitey, who was lying contentedly at his feet. The Death Whisper had become something of a celebrity across the galaxy, known as the creature whose bite had changed everything. Bitey's scales showed patterns of deep satisfaction, indicating that the creature was happy with how things had developed. "The Death Whispers are amazing partners," Jake said. "They can sense biological threats from incredible distances and help us develop treatments before problems become serious. It's like having a galaxy-wide early warning system." Dr. Amanda Cole approached them, carrying a datapad full of reports from across human space. As the first director of the Human Biological Response Corps, she coordinated humanity's efforts to help other species deal with biological contamination. "Jake, we just received another request," she said. "The Andromedan Republic wants us to help them reclaim 3 worlds that were lost to plague weapons 200 years ago. They're offering to share their star mapping technology in exchange." Jake nodded. "Add it to the list. How many requests are we up to now?" 47 active projects across 23 star systems, Dr. Cole replied. "Everything from cleaning up old battlefields to preventing new diseases. Humanity has become the galaxy's biological cleanup crew." It was a role that humans had never expected to play, but one they had proven uniquely suited for. Jake's survival of Death Whisper Venom had revealed that humans could not only resist biological threats, but could also help other species develop similar resistance. Governor Patricia Wells had become Earth's first interspecies cooperation director, working from her office on New Montana to coordinate relationships between human colonies and their alien neighbors. The world that had almost been destroyed by biological warfare was now the center of galactic cooperation efforts. "Jake, there's someone here to see you," Patricia's voice came over the communication system. Jake walked to the station's main docking bay, where a familiar ship was arriving. Commander Thex Vox stepped out, but he looked very different from the military leader who had attacked New Montana. His scales were brighter, his posture more relaxed, and he carried no weapons. "Dr. Murphy," Thex Vox said, offering a formal greeting gesture. "I bring greetings from the Zarian Council. We have officially disbanded our biological warfare division and converted all our weapon production facilities to medical research centers." "That's wonderful news, Commander," Jake replied. "How is your crew adapting to the changes?" "Better than expected," Thex Vox admitted. "Many of my former weapons officers have become excellent doctors and researchers. It turns out that the skills needed to create biological weapons are very similar to those needed to create biological treatments. This transformation had happened throughout the Zerion hegemony. The military force that had once conquered worlds, through biological warfare, had become a medical organization dedicated to healing the damage they had caused. Former Zarian generals now worked alongside human doctors to develop new treatments for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. Dr. Nathan Bell joined them, carrying the latest results from his historical research. "Jake, we've made another breakthrough in understanding Earth's ancient history. The archaeological teams have found evidence of the civilization that attacked Earth 65 million years ago." "What did they find?" Jake asked. "They found themselves," Nathan replied with a grim smile. "The attackers were an early version of one of the species we know today. They were trying to eliminate what they saw as biological competition for galactic resources." Jake felt Bitey's attention sharpen through their connection. The Death Whisper was interested in this information, and through their bond, Jake could sense ancient memories stirring in the creature's mind. "The interesting thing is," Nathan continued, "they succeeded in eliminating most life on Earth, but the survivors, our ancestors and the ancestors of creatures like Bitey, didn't just survive. They evolved to be stronger than anything the attackers could create. So, in trying to destroy Earth's life, they accidentally created the most biologically resilient species in the galaxy," Jake said. "Exactly. And now those species are helping everyone else become more resilient, too." Jake looked around the docking bay at the mix of humans and aliens working together. Scientists from different worlds collaborated on research projects. Engineers shared technology to build better habitats. Children from multiple species learned from each other in integrated schools. "Dr. Murphy," Commander Thex Vox said, "there is something else. The Zarian Council wants to formally apologize to Earth for our attempted attack. We also want to share information about other military forces in the galaxy that might see humanity as a threat." "Are there others planning attacks?" Jake asked. "No," Thex Vox replied. "After what happened to us, most militaristic civilizations have decided that cooperation with humans is preferable to conflict. But knowledge is still important for prevention." Dr. Cole approached with more reports. "Jake, the Rigel system has officially requested that we establish a permanent human colony in their space. They want our help dealing with a recurring plague that affects their agricultural worlds every few years. And the Centauri Alliance wants us to help them develop new medical treatments using techniques we learned from the Death Whispers, added Dr. Yithvel, who had become the chief alien liaison for the Response Corps. Jake felt a deep sense of satisfaction through his connection with Bitten. The Death Whisper understood that their species had found their true purpose, not as predators, but as partners, in healing and protection. "You know what the best part is?" Jake said to the group gathered around him. 6 months ago, I thought I was just going to study some interesting alien animals. I never imagined that getting bitten by one would lead to all this. Through the station's windows, they could see ships arriving and departing constantly. Some carried human medical teams to distant worlds. Others brought alien researchers to collaborate on new projects. The space around the station was busy with the traffic of a galaxy learning to work together. Jake walked back to the observation deck and looked down at the children playing in the garden. A young human girl was teaching a Zealothi child how to skip stones in one of the ponds. A Vorthak child was showing a human boy how to identify different types of flowers by their chemical signatures. "They're growing up in a different galaxy than we did," Jake said to Bitten. "One where species differences are advantages to be shared, not threats to be feared." Bitten's scales shifted to patterns that Jake recognized as contentment and hope. Through their connection, he could sense similar feelings from Death Whispers across dozens of worlds, where they now worked alongside humans to protect and heal. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most dangerous species was also the most necessary, and sometimes the most important discoveries came from being brave enough to approach something that looked frightening and saying, "It's only a little tingly." Jake smiled and scratched behind Bitey's ears. The creature purred with satisfaction, its scales glowing softly in the light from the stars beyond. Together they watched the children play in their impossible garden, growing up in a universe where biological diversity was celebrated rather than feared. The age of biological warfare was over. The age of biological cooperation had begun, and it all started with a scientist who refused to be afraid of a beautiful, dangerous creature that just wanted to make contact.